Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. My name is Daniel Eisenberg. I'll be giving a talk on FinOps Strategy today. I work at Capital One. I've been here for 11 and a half years now. I've done a lot of different things at my time at Capital One. Started in VMware operations, then went to data center consolidation. We then decided we were going to the cloud, so we did a lot of system integration and cloud migrations. I did a brief stint at a startup that we purchased called WikiBuy, which is now Capital One Shopping. It saves you money on your checkouts. It's a Chrome extension. And for the past 4 years, I've been on this FinOps team, managing strategy, products, dev tools, customer engagement, and a few different items. I live here in Brooklyn, not too far. Times Square is an interesting place. Definitely check out Brooklyn if you're in here just for the day or two, or you have some extra time. From a roadmap perspective, I'm going to be talking about a few different topics. I'm going to start to give a brief introduction about Capital One, who we are, and how we operate a successful FinOps program. And then get into kind of how to craft and think about your own FinOps strategy. How do you sustain it? How do you implement it? And then end with some examples and some trends, and hopefully leave some time for Q&A. So to jump right in, we're Capital One. To me, we're really a tech company that does banking as opposed to a traditional financial institution. We have over 10,000 engineers. We're 100% migrated to the public cloud. And we build most of our applications in-house, which leads to new and unique digital banking experiences for our customers. To hit on our cloud journey or our overall tech journey, it began in 2015 with our journey to AWS. We realized that the power of the cloud gave us the ability to scale and meet our customer needs quicker than in the data centers. In 2016, we were the first major US bank to declare that we were all in on the cloud. And at that same time, we also launched Cloud Custodian, which is an open source cloud governance tool, which I talk about a little bit later. By 2017, we adopted Snowflake as our enterprise-wide data warehouse. And in 2020, we closed our last data center. Most recently, we've launched Capital One Software, which is an internal organization that helps commercialize internal tools that could help serve the needs of other companies that are born or built on the cloud. The biggest one to date is a tool called Slingshot. It's a Snowflake optimization tool that's helped Capital One save about 50% on all of our query costs across the company. Like I mentioned, we declared that we were all in on the cloud, exiting that last data center. This enabled us to embrace cloud-native technologies and serverless technologies like Lambda, Fargate, Dynamo. The Capital One shopping app that I talked about earlier that I worked on was built utilizing microservice architecture and uses real-time streaming of data. So there's lots of benefits of being on the cloud, and obviously the time to market is the biggest one. Back in the data center days, it took about 6 months to get a physical box, which is just crazy to think about now that we can create thousands and thousands of servers in the matter of minutes. All right, so our journey in FinOps didn't kind of happen overnight. It took many years to get to where we are today. Originally, FinOps was led by our finance team, while tech was working on kind of migrating to the cloud and getting there as fast as possible. We had a robust tagging governance strategy already, with Cloud Custodian being an early adopter for us. So our cost allocation early on was really, really good. But finance realized that they needed some engineering support to help drive efficiency and build tooling in the cloud to support our engineers. From there, we really worked hard on driving awareness and working with different divisions across the company to drive that priority. Finally, we moved out of that last data center, and then we switched our focus to that divisional engagement to leadership buy-in. Noticing that when we were talking with a lot of different divisions, they understood the opportunities that we were telling them and selling them. However, they said that the priority wasn't there. So we worked with our divisional SLT and created enterprise-wide FinOps initiatives and KPIs to track that were presented regularly to the leadership, but also in enterprise-wide meetings for the entire organization. But that doesn't mean that we're flying in our FinOps journey. There's still a lot more to do. We can continue to have more KPIs. We can build more business unit metrics. We can drive more automation for our developers. We can build more efficient applications at the onset instead of having to optimize your applications when they're already in production. We can utilize AI and ML even more for anomaly detection and forecasting and optimizations and figuring out where we want to go next. So there's still a lot of room, and we have a long roadmap ahead of us, but we feel like we're doing a pretty good job today. At Capital One, we really look at FinOps in 4 main pillars. The first is the people, or the FinOps team, as well as our team across the company. So our FinOps team is a tech and finance partnership. So part of our FinOps team actually sits in the tech organization, and part of it sits in the finance organization. On the tech side, we have a few different dev teams that are building out all of the different applications and optimization and cost visualization tools that we have today. And then I lead a FinOps Strategy team, which works on divisional engagement, RIs and SP analysis, one-on-one consulting, a lot of different hats that we may have. But the biggest thing here is to enable cross-functional teams across the company to care about FinOps, because if you're just doing it centrally, it's hard to kind of change the curve or get more efficient in the long run. Next up is architecture and standards, and this is the thing that really takes, I think, the most time for an organization. It did for us. Capital One was built on security and resiliency being at the forefront of everything that we did. So we started first with incorporating cost or FinOps principles into our standards and policies. So yes, we're taking backups, but how long are we taking backups for? How many backups are we keeping at a time? And now we're working through actual FinOps efficiency standards. Are you using the right technology for that use case? Are you being serverless first or Graviton first? And then we get into tooling. Capital One is built on a centralized CI/CD pipeline tool. We have standardized templates for deploying all of our infrastructure. This really helps from a FinOps perspective because we can drive different standards into the tooling itself. So we can take the engineering thought process of, oh, do I need to use a specific type of volume or do I need to use a specific service? And we already have the templates built in a cost-efficient way. They're definitely able to make changes to that, but if we can at least take some of the thought process out for them, they can build efficiently and build efficiently quicker. Next up is our kind of FinOps tooling, or we call it Cloud X here at Capital One. So we have an optimization tooling that goes through a lot of different services and looks at a ton of different metrics across the board, whether you're working on Fargate, EC2, Lambda, S3. We can provide a bunch of different metrics for you so that you understand maybe this is the area that I need to work through. We have cost visualization tools that take the cloud bill and give you many different ways to look at it and interpret the bill. We have alerting, so you can set your own alerts based on different thresholds and different anomaly detection as well, utilizing AI and ML. And the last is that governance tooling, right? So that's where we heavily utilize Cloud Custodian to automatically go through our environment and govern on different type of policies that we could create. So we've noticed that there's a large amount of waste with unutilized or unattached EBS volumes. We can utilize Cloud Custodian to go in and delete them after X period of time so that, again, that developer doesn't need to say, all right, well, I built this application 3 years ago. We're now on our 10th iteration. Do I need to clean up all of that old stuff? If we can do that automatically for them in non-prod, it saves a ton of money. Production is a little bit different of a beast to focus on, but if you can get non-prod focused first, you can then start figuring out where to work through in production. And the last up is training when it comes to tools, or do you have the right tools for your end users to understand what is FinOps? Do you have CBTs or learning paths at your company that people can take to really drive their understanding? Then it gets into the analytics and modeling. And this is where you want your FinOps team to really be spending the most time. You want them to focus on what's the biggest opportunity, what's the thing that is coming out, the largest initiative that we could save the most amount of money on, or where should we focus our time over the next year or 2 years. Utilizing AI and ML to help identify anomalies, opportunities, drive forecasting is a big piece to our practice. Our ultimate goal as a FinOps team is to drive local accountability and local enablement. We want to work ourselves out of a job. In the long term, we want our tools and culture to drive the right decisions for the team so that we don't need to be there to tell people what to do or to help them optimize. We feel that a combination of these 4 investments will help kind of drive that culture shift at Capital One. And now we get into kind of building your own FinOps strategy. The first thing to do is kind of assess your environment and understand where do you want to focus? Are you really big on AWS and you're mainly data warehouse and you want to focus heavily on your data? Do you want to focus on compute? Do you want to focus on serverless technologies? Do you have a good understanding of your build? Maybe your budgets and forecasts is the main thing you want to focus on. But the big piece here is picking one and not picking everything at once. If you start looking at too many different KPIs and too many metrics, you kind of get lost and you kind of forget your main goal of working through one optimization or one opportunity. Once you kind of assess and figure out where you want to work, you then start setting goals, whether it's an optimization goal, maybe you want to have that cost allocation goal or a forecast to budget goal. And from there, you're governing. How do you maintain and get that information out to the teams? So you crafted your strategy, you've understood what resource you want to work on or what cloud provider or what financial aspect. Then you need to work on implementing it. And this is where the tooling piece really helps. There's a lot of conversations around tooling that are had, whether you want to do it in-house, you want to work with a vendor, is there cloud native tooling or open source tooling that you can utilize? But the biggest piece is getting that information out to the end users. Do they have the ability to either go to a tool or look at some reporting and understand what they need to do? And the other piece from that implementation is gaining that leadership buy-in, because if their leadership isn't telling them that efficiency and these goals are important, they're probably not going to make any changes and nothing's going to happen with your bill. It's going to continue to go up. And one piece that I'm really big on is like, how can we automate the efficiency on behalf of the end user? So what are ways that we can build our tooling so that the developer or the engineer or the architect doesn't need to spend time on thinking about efficiency or thinking about optimization or their architecture? If those decisions are already made or they're already happening on behalf of them in the background, it lets them drive more features, more development on behalf of the company. And last up is sustaining your FinOps strategy. So always continuously monitoring and alerting on what's going on. Are you, as a FinOps team, aware of, on a daily basis, a monthly basis, a weekly basis, your cloud costs? Are you also talking with tech, product, or delivery around new imperatives that are happening? A lot of times, new initiatives can happen or come from our cyber team or our security team that have a really large cost impact that wasn't brought up with the finance team or the FinOps team. So we're working after the fact to figure out ways that we can reduce that overall run rate. Next up, team collaboration and training. This is a big one. Cross-functional teams are your friends. So you really want to work with architecture, finance, product to understand their roadmaps, to get them trained on core FinOps principles, whether that is getting your FinOps certification or allowing teams to take that training, or AWS certifications or other cloud certifications. Kind of building up the teams and their knowledge is really important. One example that I like to talk through is Capital One's journey with intelligent tiering. So if people don't know what intelligent tiering is, it's Capital One's, or it's not, it's an AWS service on top of S3, which is their data warehouse. Intelligent tiering allows you to automatically move objects from the most expensive tier to a cheaper tier over time, depending on access patterns. This is something that we noticed our data was growing and our costs were growing. AWS came out with this brand new service and we're like, all right, we're gonna test this out. We tested it out with our large data warehouse and ended up saving a large significant of money over time because we realized this data wasn't being used. But it didn't just end there. Over time, we realized that there was a limitation to intelligent tiering. It was still keeping the data in warm storage versus cold storage. Cold storage being a lot cheaper than warm storage. So now we're actually tailoring our conversation and our strategy there to move objects through intelligent tiering, and you still utilizing that service, but moving them to cold storage over time to drive even more savings, which it wasn't something that we even thought about when we first started. So finally, there's a bunch of different trends and considerations and challenges that teams should be focusing on, and they're ever changing. There might be a new service that came out that is making a lot of noise, or a new AI tool, or a new GCP service. But don't ever stop iterating or stop thinking about how you can continue to better your FinOps team or your FinOps strategy. It's an evolving role, and even the role of a FinOps professional is continuing to evolve. It's part finance, it's part tech, it's part consultant, it's part software engineer. The job is changing on a kind of a weekly basis. It feels like a Capital One. And in conclusion, I kind of went through these slides pretty quickly, but it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't get to the maturity level that we're at in a year or 2 years or 3 years. Heavily invest in your people, not just the people that are on the core FinOps team, but the people around the company that you're working with on a daily basis, and keep learning and iterate through your different processes. So we have some time left. I went pretty quickly, so love to take any questions that people may have around FinOps or strategy or Capital One. Yeah, so all of our costs at Capital One are charged back to different divisions all the way down to the application level. And that really does help drive the conversation in showing them on a daily basis what their costs are, broken out by what resource or what service and what region or what account it might be in, and kind of walking them through those different charges. In the back. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, so he asked if we thought about our FinOps journey when we first started our cloud migration journey. And the answer was probably not. I came on this team a little bit, maybe a year or two after that. But originally, we were heavily focused on just getting out of our data centers and getting into the cloud as quickly as possible. Cost was kind of a byproduct of that thinking. So with the more kind of understanding we got of the cloud, when we finally finished the migration, we were able to spend time thinking through the cost and the efficiency of what we were doing in the public cloud. Again, the main focus was, I would say, security and resiliency was the main focus of being a financial institution new to the cloud, and then kind of maturing into the efficiency and cost side of things.
Have you found any tools? Are you using any third-party tools, or is everything built in-house at this point for stuff like allocations or multi-tenancy or doing the chargebacks?
Yeah, so right now everything is built in-house, but for things like Kubernetes, we are looking at a few different vendor products, just because that is a unique niche use case to kind of allocate costs back out to the namespace. So that is one area that we are looking to utilize some third-party vendors. Any other questions that I can answer? Yeah, so mainly we are fully in AWS, like 99%, I would say. We are exploring other cloud providers, and there's maybe a very small usage, but we are mainly all in on AWS and making that work for all of our different divisions. Mike. Yeah, so how do we build credibility with our FinOps journey? Mike's on my team, so thank you, Mike, for that question. But it's really about showing the data and showing your work. And if you can walk through the different data points that you may have, whether you're sitting down with that team and going through the AWS console and showing them different memory metrics or CPU or network or I/O, or reviewing their curve bill with them, or reviewing their architecture and showing them different ways that they can leverage new services, and then walking them through kind of the dev and QA before they get to prod and seeing that kind of cost be realized. That kind of drove a lot of confidence in our tooling and our recommendations. Any other questions? No? Oh, one more. Yeah, so if they're cost allocation or cost optimization tooling, our FinOps team will take a look at it, and we'll be the kind of the first team to say, hey, is this something that we want to invest in? And then we'll bring it to our security and our cyber teams to say, will this work for Capital One? But we're trying to understand if this is something that we could utilize. Is it a benefit to Capital One? Can we build it ourselves, or is this something that we want to continue to invest in? So like Focus is a great example. It's something that we really think that we, in partnership with the FinOps Foundation, can continue to invest in. It's something that we can utilize both here at Capital One, but help kind of grow as an enterprise or externally as well. Great. Well, thank you very much. I'll be up here if anyone has any more questions. Thank you.